Welcome back. We have another journal to read, and this time it's Gehn's journal. Like with Atrus' journal, if you're not interested in listening to me read the journals, then you can simply skip these videos. It will probably take me 2 videos to read the entire journal. '82-13. Now, if you remember the dates in Atrus' journal, they were all 87, so this is about 5 years ago. The latest ink formulation has proven a failure. Even when writing in my most promising books, I obtain only the barest glimmer of a connection. It is frustrating to expend so much effort creating a blank book, only to end up destroying it when it doesn't work. There are days when the lab is uncomfortably warm from the flames of these failed attempts. The further I refine each element, the formulation of the inks and papers, the physical dimensions of the books, the more I realize that the list of potential combinations is nearly infinite. It is during moments like these that I despair. Without access to Dunny, my long-term goals may never be accomplished. Nevertheless, there are avenues of research which remain to be explored. 8258. I am discontinuing regular observations of the stars beneath the fissure. Although I've been able to track the dark cloud-like formations that migrate through the starfield and have proven that their paths are cyclical, without proper instrumentation it is pointless to continue. My general theory concerning the nature of the fissure has remained unaltered since it first appeared. It seems that the fabric of this age has been breached in a way that permits matter to be hospitably exchanged between 2 discrete but overlapping spaces, much like a link, but the apparent physical contradictions surrounding this juncture defy logical reason. The great column of wind that was formed when the fissure first appeared suggests a vacuum as one might expect in space, yet my early experimentations reveal the presence of a breathable atmosphere. That Atrus and Catherine threw themselves into the void is further evidence that it might be safe to travel, but without knowing its true nature I cannot take the risk myself. It is also difficult to say what would happen if I were to reopen it after so long, but it is likely that the results would be catastrophic, given the changes that have occurred in the age since that time. Maintenance on the steam vent caps completed, 83-10. I am extremely pleased with the continued success of this system. I believe the construction to have been true to the Dunny's designs of my memory, another example of the superiority of Dunny technology. It's ironic that Atrus and Catherine unwittingly provided me with such a convenient source of power. These are the steam valves that we've been seeing all over Riven. As with many of my views over the years, my thoughts regarding the origin of the fissure have changed. I have recently begun to wonder whether it was actually an unexpected byproduct of the changes Catherine and Atrus wrote into this age during their escape. Certainly by casting their linking book into the void they trapped me here quite effectively, but I do not believe that Atrus intended the book to be lost in this manner. Much better to destroy it than to risk the possibility of its falling into unknown hands. Also, had they foreseen the creation of the fissure, they would surely have thought that the vacuum it created would eventually consume the atmosphere of this planet, a fate which Catherine undoubtedly would have deemed unacceptable for her home world. If I had not been there to supervise the construction of the seal, this is most certainly what would have happened, for the villagers were far too frightened to even approach the vortex without my urging. I hold on to the belief that it was an unintended consequence of their writing for another reason as well. I prefer to think that my son had meant for this age to be merely a prison for me, rather than a death sentence. 83-5-14. The construction of the imagers has proceeded without fault. It is interesting to see how easily I've been able to adapt the Dunny technology to mimic that of the Amat. In some ways the similarities between the 2 cultures were striking. I wonder if perhaps there had been communication or commerce between the 2 cultures in earlier times, maybe Kita's people or even descendants of the Dunny. It pleases me to think so. Here you can see these imagers, some schematics of them. We've seen an imager like this in the school, and we've seen one in the temple as well. Note, it's possible that if I were somehow able to supply the books with a power source of sufficient magnitude, I could suppress the variance enough to facilitate a solid link. It is doubtful that the geothermal cap generators could provide such an enormous surge. Perhaps I could adapt the fire marbles. I have been cataloguing the natural elements of this age for nearly 30 years now, yet still I continue to find evidence of the Dunny's preoccupation with 5. As a boy, it was very clear to me that the number 5 had a special significance to the Dunny society, from the ancient heraldic emblems of the ruling elite humble homes of the commoners, it was ubiquitous. Its presence here is obviously a direct reflection of the minds that designed the text that I used to compose this age, further proof that through their art the Dunny masters were indeed creating the marvelous worlds they wrote, and not, as many have mistakenly thought, merely building links to pre-existing worlds. While most of my constructions have been based on Dunny designs, I see now that the ones that I have imbued with the power of 5 are clearly the most beautiful, the most perfect, and, I believe, the most structurally sound. I am still attempting to determine how the Dunny color symbology reflects this superior design principle. Although superficially it is based on a 6-color system, I am convinced that there has to be a deeper connection to 5. I will continue to investigate. Well, these are the 6 symbols for the 6 Dunny colors, and they are the symbols that we have seen on the rotating domes. 83, 9, 11. I finally made a breakthrough. I have succeeded in modifying the fire marbles to generate enough power to hold a descriptive linking book in a stable matrix. I have linked to a new world. It is a harsh and desolate age, but it is nonetheless well suited for my purposes, and so I have designated it my 233rd. The numbers here are actually 9 and 8, but Dunny is a base 25 number system, so it's 9 times 25 plus 8, which is 233. It also couldn't be 98 because the suffix is wrong. By studying it closely, I believe I will eventually be able to create a more appropriate age for us to resettle on. For now, I will build an office and set up my living quarters there, in order that I may conduct my experiments in safety and without distraction. Well, here we see a diagram of his office on the 233rd age, and a very strange looking mountain there. I must admit that I am proud of my work. To think that in such primitive conditions I have accomplished in 29 years what it took the original Dunny centuries to achieve. Note: repair outerwear for work on this world. The goggles may need to be redesigned altogether. 84.4.13. I have begun constructions on a series of link sites for each island that will connect Riven with my new office on 233. The Survey Guild has finally completed the site location for each island, according to my exact specifications, and the installation of the domes is underway at last. Work on the central power source got off to a bit of a bad start, I'm afraid, but the pace has picked up considerably since then, and I anticipate no further delays. I'm looking forward to finally having a civilized mode of transportation. So, this is the central dome on Dome Island, and it's apparently part of a power source for the books. The small domes provide power to the individual books, and the central dome generates the power. Here we see the symbols again that we saw earlier in the diagram inside the big dome, but we still don't know what they mean, but apparently they have something to do with these domes and the power source. Due to the rebels' continued disturbances, I've decided to install a coded access system into all of the domes. This here is the combination of the domes, but it's not straightforward to decipher, so I will explain it after I finished reading the journal. 85.6.7. I caught one of my assistants looking over this journal today. I'm glad I've chosen to write it in a language they cannot decipher. Note: discuss the security with each guildmaster. No problems expected from the maintainers, educators and surveyors. Question the bookmakers and builders more closely. Okay, since I cannot finish reading this journal in a single video, I will continue from here in the next video. See you then.